Hello. Today I'd like to talk to you about art. Art in general comes in two major forms, from two-dimensional to three-dimensional art. Two-dimensional art is generally done on a two-dimensional surface, while three-dimensional art is not. According to the PhiladelphiaMuseum.org, under the article known as Drawing Materials, there are many different types of materials used in two-dimensional art, from colored pencils to graphite pencils to charcoal pencils, pen and ink, pastels, and crayons. While everything besides pen and ink can be smeared, smudged to give a gradient or smoother transition of colors, pen and ink cannot. Pen and ink must use a method known as cross-hatching, which is where you take lines and put them in opposite directions to give a sense of value and shading. Now, pen and ink cannot be erased. Pen and ink, if you make a mistake, you must live with the mistake, while colored pencil, charcoal, and the rest can be erased. While each material has a different eraser for different types of materials, charcoal uses an eraser called a kneaded eraser. It is moldable and pliable, and kind of like Play-Doh, it feels like. You can stretch and pull it, and when it gets dirty from all the charcoal that you use to erase, you just bend it and mesh it together, and eventually it cleans itself. Now, graphite pencils use a normal eraser. You can use normal erasers on other ones, but they generally work better with graphite. Now, graphite pencils are generally used for finer and more exact detail work because you can get a finer point and tip on the pencil, while charcoal pencils you cannot. Charcoal pencils are thicker, bulkier, and overall heavier, so they're more used to generalize an image. Now on to paints. According to Artists Inspire Artists, under the topic of different types of art paint, written by Ellison, there are three major types of paint, from oils to acrylics to watercolor. Paint is made by pigment plus binder. The binder in acrylic is acrylic plastic, while oils has oil and watercolor is water. Each paint is unique in its own way. Oil paint was the first to be used. Originally found in 7th century caves, they were used on cave walls to depict images of ancient times. The original binder in that was animal fat, and animal fat had oil in it. Oil paints can take up to a year to cure and fully dry. Oil paints were originally used in 11th century and widely used by the Renaissance painters, where they would use it in their everyday works. Oil paints, along with the rest of the paints, can be mixed evenly and give a better gradient, just like charcoal pencils and colored pencils. Now, acrylic paint came along later. Acrylic paint, since its binder is acrylic plastic, dries faster. Acrylic paint dries in 2 to 4 minutes instead of a year, so most painters nowadays will use acrylic because it still uses the same as oil but dries faster. Watercolor is the same as acrylic, dries fast, but unfortunately watercolor is more transparent, translucent. So it's a thinner layer and it's not as vibrant colors as oil and acrylic. You need more layers to make a color pop. Each paint has a specific way to clean the brush. It is a solvent. Water, color, and acrylic uses water. Oil, on the other hand, needs a special one known as turpenoid. Since oil can erode through plastic, the tube that comes with oils is metal, while acrylic is plastic. Same thing with water color. Now, on to three-dimensional art. The information came from ceramics.org, and it's known as The History of Ceramics is the title. Now, the history of ceramics states that the Egyptians used ceramics first, but I know later on that the Indians used it as well. Ceramics can either be used by hand or on a wheel. Back in the day, Indians used to put clay that they would find at the river into their weaving baskets, and then they would fire them, and the image of the baskets would be imprinted on the clay. This was the early form. Nowadays, sculptors and potters use different methods known as the wheel. The wheel is a table that spins very fast in a circular motion, and a potter puts his hand on the clay to shape clay into any shape he wants or she wants. They can make vases, cylindrical tubes, and pots, mugs, bowls, anything. They can make them hollow, and they can make the walls thinner and thicker based on where they want from their hands. They make very exact and evenly distributed clay all around in the vases and vessels. Clay needs to be fired in a kiln, which heats the clay up very high and makes the clay harden, such as this. It is very dense, thick, and hard clay now that it's been fired. This, however, was given a glaze coating, which makes it smooth, shiny, and glass-like. Glaze coating is the final covering of a ceramic piece. Most potters nowadays will use glaze to finish their piece and give it a shinier, more professional look. Overall, art can be used in many different ways, from two-dimensional to three-dimensional. I hope that this has informed you, and I hope that you want to go out and make some art of your own.